Prince Philip's secret will finally reveal Princess Catherine, chosen above Queen Camilla. There are secrets buried so deeply that they seem destined never to be revealed. And yet, over time, strange pieces begin to surface, clues that guide public opinion toward one of the most shocking revelations about the British royal family in recent years. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, a woman admired globally for her graceful appearance and quiet devotion, appears to be not only a symbol of royal propriety, but also the keeper of an invaluable secret from none other than Prince Philip, the most powerful man after Queen Elizabeth II. While many royal daughters-in-law have struggled to adapt to the strict environment of palace life, Catherine has consistently earned the favor of even the most veteran and conservative figures. Most notably, her relationship with Prince Philip, who was famously strict and aloof, was surprisingly close. Quiet, without pomp or ceremony, yet so deep that, according to recent revelations from sources close to the palace, Philip left a top-secret will specifically for Catherine before taking his final breath. What could be in that will to unsettle the entire royal family and ignite a media storm? And why was it Catherine, no one else, who was chosen? These questions are now fueling a surge of curiosity across the United Kingdom. After Prince Philip's passing in April 2021, Britain not only mourned the loss of a steadfast royal figure, but also witnessed a suspicious silence surrounding his will. As per tradition dating back to 1910, the will of a senior royal member is sealed and securely stored in a private vault, inaccessible to the public or even to certain members of the family. Yet even when all doors are closed, whispers still snake through the cold stone corridors of Windsor Castle, and this time, they didn't revolve around inheritance, but a stunning decision. Prince Philip had made a special request for Princess Catherine, not for Charles, not for William, and certainly not for Camilla, the woman who had long hoped to be formally acknowledged by Philip as part of the royal power structure after years of being seen as the other woman. No, it was Catherine, the woman who had quietly stood behind William, always smiling, always patient, and always winning the hearts of those who were thought to be unshakable. In the days following the funeral, while the world focused on the image of the funeral procession gliding silently through the solemn grounds of Windsor Castle, three key figures of the royal family met in secret in a room on the castle's western wing. No media, no attendance. Only a dark envelope, sealed in red wax bearing Prince Philip's personal crest. Inside was not wealth, it was a final wish. A choice. According to palace insiders, Prince Philip had entrusted a symbolic role not merely honorary, but profoundly meaningful to the Princess of Wales, the long-term representation of the Rifles Regiment and patronage of the Duke of Edinburgh's award, the program he devoted his life to building, meant to inspire youth around the world. This wasn't just a title. It was a piece of his soul, the spiritual legacy that Philip wished to pass on to the person he trusted most. And shockingly, that person was not the woman who would officially become Queen Camilla. The choice sent shockwaves through the royal family. Camilla had once hoped and even felt certain that, as the current wife of King Charles, she would be acknowledged by Philip. But Philip, a man forged by military discipline, who valued loyalty and dignity above all, seemed to have seen in Catherine something that transcended social connections or status. He had observed her from the early days when she was merely William's girlfriend, watched how she handled the press, the pressure, and the invisible traps of a palace far less gentle than it appeared. Catherine never retaliated publicly, never uttered a reckless word, and it was this composed silence that made him stop and look more closely. This wasn't just a beautiful girl. This was a woman of endurance. Sources close to the Rifles confirmed that Philip once said, at a private party in 2019, if there's anyone capable of representing loyalty and renewal, it's Catherine. She doesn't need to say much, but the way she lives makes others reflect on themselves. That wasn't just a compliment. It was a sign of the decision that was to come. The role of honorary colonel of the Rifles is not merely a symbolic military position. It is a representation of the bond between the royal family and the soldiers. Philip held this position for many years and always felt the need for a worthy successor, not just a placeholder, but someone who could inspire and uphold the regiment's spirit of discipline. And when he looked at Catherine, he saw someone with that ability naturally, effortlessly. When this information leaked through unofficial media channels, public opinion immediately split into two clear camps. One welcomed the well-deserved recognition given to Catherine, the most beloved woman of the current royal generation. The other quietly turned their gaze toward Camilla with a look of suspicion. Did she know about this beforehand? Was her silence a sign of agreement or of suppressed resentment? No one answered. No one spoke. But from that moment, the way Camilla looked at Catherine during public events began to change. Gone was the polite, approving gaze of old. In its place was a chill barely concealed as something had been taken. A position, a legacy, or the recognition she believed she was more deserving of, but the public didn't see it that way. Subsequent polls conducted by The Times revealed that over 72% of Britons supported Catherine taking over the role from Prince Philip, seeing her as the embodiment of modernity while still upholding the core values of the monarchy. In contrast, support for Camilla, assuming the same role, was just 21%, an astonishingly low number for someone who had officially become the queen consort. Behind the silk curtains and lavish feathered hats, that divide simmers like a small flame. Windsor Castle may appear grand and serene, but it is also a place that holds whispers no one dares name aloud. Will Camilla accept that choice as part of the past? Or will she quietly seek to reclaim the influence she believes was stolen from her, and Catherine, the one suddenly thrust into the center of an invisible power struggle? Will she continue to maintain her composure, as she always has? What is certain is that on the day the will was read in that ancient stone room, something irreversible took place. Catherine was no longer just the family's daughter-in-law. She officially became the bearer of a piece of Prince Philip's soul, the man who never chose wrongly. Born in a time of upheaval, Prince Philip was not heir to the throne, but he held the fate and honor of the British royal family in his hands for more than 7 decades. That man, cold, stern, often described as the steel wall behind Queen Elizabeth II, had lived a childhood torn apart by war, separation, and abandonment in his very homeland. Few know that Philip was a prince without a kingdom. Born on the island of Corfu in 1921, part of the Kingdom of Greece and Denmark, he was the youngest child in a royal family that was overthrown and forced into exile. At just 18 months old, he was placed in a fruit crate to escape Greece aboard a warship, fleeing political retribution aimed at his father. His mother, Princess Alice, suffered from mental illness and was institutionalized. His father abandoned the family and lived a reckless life in France. And young Philip, left with no home and nowhere to belong, began a life of drifting from Germany to France to England, raised by distant relatives and a few compassionate friends. It was within that isolation that Philip forged his iron will. He refused to let fate decide the course of his life. Sent to Gordonstoun, a harsh boarding school in Scotland, Philip learned discipline, resilience, and a spirit of service to others. There, he didn't just survive, he rose to lead. Poverty, cold, and isolation didn't break him. They forged him into a warrior, a man ready to face any challenge royal life would throw his way. When World War II broke out, Prince Philip enlisted in the British Royal Navy. He took part in numerous brutal battles in the Mediterranean and the Pacific, at times commanding gun batteries, and at others, warships. His comrades called him the soldier who feared nothing, the one who always smiled even when bombs exploded nearby. The days adrift on the sea only made him tougher, and it was during this time that he began corresponding with a young girl, Princess Elizabeth, who would later become the Queen of the United Kingdom. In 1947, the marriage between Philip and Elizabeth took place before millions of witnesses. But behind the fairy tale wedding lay unimaginable sacrifice. Philip, once a prince of 2 kingdoms, had to renounce his nationality, titles, and original religion, change his surname to Mountbatten, and give up his dream of continuing his naval service to stand behind his wife. No throne, no power. Not even the right to pass his name on to his children, Philip endured in silence, becoming the noble shadow of the British royal family. But to think he was just a shadow would be a grave mistake. For over 70 years beside Elizabeth II, it was Philip who kept the crown balanced when the monarchy faced crisis. He didn't shy away from the media or responsibility. With his blunt personality and unfiltered speech, Philip was often criticized as undiplomatic, but it was that very candor that allowed him to connect with the public. They saw in him a real man, unpolished, unapologetic, and absolutely loyal. He sponsored over 800 charitable organizations, actively promoting the roles of science, education, and the environment within royal life. But his greatest contribution is the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, a program that changed the lives of millions of young people around the world. He believed children didn't need to be princes or princesses to live honorably. They needed to be challenged, pushed out of their comfort zones, and taught to serve others just as he had experienced during his overlooked youth. Beneath his cold exterior, Philip was a deeply emotional man who loved his family fiercely. He was the only one who could make Queen Elizabeth laugh in her most serious moments. He often openly defended his children and grandchildren from the cruelty of the media, though his methods could sometimes be harsh and uncompromising. In the eyes of outsiders, he was the last man of the old generation. But to those closest to him, he was the indestructible pillar of the House of Windsor. And surprisingly, in his later years, Prince Philip, the man who had long distrusted the younger generation and often criticized modern lifestyles, found in one figure a reason to change his view, Catherine Middleton. From the first meeting, he noticed Catherine's calm, intelligent, yet humble demeanor. Not loud, not showy, Catherine exuded a sense that Philip himself described as pure détente, like Elizabeth once was. He witnessed how she entered the family with grace, not trying to stand out, but still commanding attention, not making grand statements, but every appearance left a clear impression. Catherine, according to Philip, was the one keeping time for a monarchy shaken by scandal and doubt. Her patience with William, her way of protecting her children, her absolute respect for the Queen, and for him, all of it made Philip see that the future of the monarchy lay not in power or titles, but in dignity. In his final years, as his health declined and his mind grew weary, Philip would often whisper to those close to him, "Hold on to Catherine. The girl is our last light." They say Philip was not a man who trusted easily, but Catherine reached his heart. Not just because she was his grandson's wife, but because she proved herself worthy of preserving the legacy he left behind, a legacy not written in asset lists, but in values, loyalty, duty, service to the community, and above all, compassion. And for that reason, it comes as no surprise that recent rumors have spread suggesting Prince Philip left behind a private will meant for no one else but Catherine. Not for wealth, not for ancient treasures, but because he wanted Catherine and only Catherine to carry the torch of his spirit into the new century. At a time when the royal family can no longer hide behind an untouchable halo, but must prove its worth to an increasingly pragmatic and skeptical world. No one would have guessed that a girl born in the peaceful town of Reading, educated at private schools and raised in the loving arms of her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, could go so far. Catherine is not a noblewoman, without royal blood or high ancestry, yet her simplicity, her steadfast and complete family background, became the qualities that Prince Philip secretly admired. He observed her early on quietly but deeply, just as he had watched every shift in the royal family over more than 10 years. Philip was a man of few words, exacting, and experienced. He saw in Catherine something that not everyone at the palace could see: a woman possessing silent strength, who knows when to yield and when to rise. When Catherine officially became the wife of Prince William, many in the royal family remained skeptical of an outsider entering Windsor Castle. But not Philip. He didn't merely accept her, he quietly set expectations. In her early years as a royal daughter-in-law, Catherine endured immense pressure from the media, from the public, and even from scrutinizing gazes within the palace. Yet not once was she seen losing composure. In all circumstances, Catherine maintained extraordinary calmness, discretion, and patience. It was not merely the result of training to be the future king's wife, but the mark of a great character, something Prince Philip himself had emphasized in a handwritten letter to William's strength lies not in the voice, but in the silence that listens. To Philip, Catherine was not merely a daughter-in-law. He saw in her the image of a future leader, someone who doesn't need a throne to prove power, or a crown to earn recognition. It was her quiet leadership in community initiatives, especially on mental health and child education, that moved him. When he learned she earned a gold award in the Duke of Edinburgh's award, a program he founded to challenge youth, Philip joked to a close aide, "Finally, is someone in this family strong enough to pass my tests?" It's said that Philip didn't trust easily, but in private moments, only those involved understood. In his final years, despite failing health, he closely tracked Catherine's activities. Internal reports, event and footage, even letters of thanks the public sent to Buckingham Palace, all were carefully kept. And no one knew that in his personal archives at Sandringham, there was a file simply titled Catherine. Some insiders say that before he passed, Philip wrote a supplemental will not to divide wealth, but to record a final wish. In it, he mentioned Catherine with rare regard. She doesn't need to do anything extraordinary. Her presence, in the monarchy's most uncertain times, has already been extraordinary. In an attached note, he emphasized that he entrusted Catherine with the responsibility to uphold royal traditions not by power, but through the persistence of love and kindness. After his death, in a private meeting at Kensington Palace, Catherine was summoned to a small room with only 3 others present, a legal advisor, one of Philip's former aides, and Prince William. There, she was read Prince Philip's handwritten words, movingly simple but profound. Catherine stood silent. Her eyes glistened but held back tears. She knew that no drop could express the full gratitude she felt for the man who saw her essence from the very beginning and trusted her above all. For William, that moment was among the most sacred of his life. He was raised under the influence of a grandfather who taught him to ride horses, shoot, remain silent when needed, and fight when there was no other choice. He knew Philip did not trust casually. And the fact that Philip chose Catherine, the woman he loved, and who had journeyed with him through trials, was the strongest testament to his respect. From that day on, in William's heart, Catherine was no longer just a wife, a mother to his children, the Princess of Wales. She became the one his grandfather handpicked to carry the torch. And that came with a great mission, not for fame, but for the future of the British monarchy. Yet behind her composed smile and graceful gaze at royal events, there is a woman who struggles to swallow her tears, Queen Camilla. Because it is the name Catherine, the woman Prince Philip quietly loved, that has become a deep, lingering cut in Camilla's heart. And that only became clear from what seemed like an ordinary moment the day when the honorary colonel of the Rifles unexpectedly changed hands. The glittering medal on Camilla's chest that day was once a symbol of entrusted faith. It was in 2020 when Prince Philip the Iron Man, the steadfast pillar beside Queen Elizabeth for more than 7 decades, publicly entrusted an honorary military role for the first time to the woman who had long been the most controversial figure in the British royal family, Camilla. The ceremony of transferring the honorary colonelcy of the Rifles Regiment was not merely a formal military ritual. It was a moment etched into Camilla's heart as a belated recognition from a man who had kept his distance and wariness for many years. In Philip's resolute gaze that day, Camilla saw acceptance. She wore that insignia on her chest with pride, and later, on a black dress at his funeral, as a silent yet profound farewell. But that glory didn't last long. Not long after Philip's death, internal leaks from the royal family began to circulate. This symbolic role would be unofficially transferred to someone else. And that someone was none other than Catherine, the Princess of Wales, the model wife, the icon of elegance, and the new darling of both the media and the traditional aristocracy. The pain was silent but sharp, like a knife slicing through Camilla's heart. The woman who had bravely stepped into the light from the shadow of scandal was once again pushed aside by an image too perfect, too safe, to the point that any other presence seemed to fade in comparison. She said nothing. She couldn't. How could she complain when Catherine was beloved by the entire royal family, especially the late Prince Philip? According to several confidential sources, Philip had left behind a special testament dedicated to Catherine as a final message. It contained not only symbolic assets or titles, but also a note about a future responsibility, the only person he trusted to preserve the royal lineage after his passing. Camilla knew this well. She understood that Catherine represented the new generation, a bridge between the traditional monarchy and a modern, turbulent world. But no amount of understanding could ease the feeling of being replaced, especially when that replacement was the perfect opposite of herself. One was a flawless figure, never tainted by scandal. The other had once been the cause of national division, even outrage. Camilla tried to swallow her frustration. She reminded herself that this was no longer a time for personal feelings. She was wearing the Queen's crown and couldn't let trivial matters affect the monarchy's already fragile image after a series of upheavals. Yet, the pain lingered. It didn't stem from losing a title, but from the disappointment and broken trust. She had once believed that after years of silent and loyal service to the royal family, she would have a solid, irreplaceable place. But Catherine's radiant and strong presence seemed to shake the foundation of everything Camilla had built. This transfer, though unofficial, carried a meaning far deeper than an honorary role. It was like an unspoken declaration. A new era not only requires a new king, but also a new symbol. And that symbol was not Camilla. Those close to her revealed that Camilla never expressed dissatisfaction, but the subtle changes in her public demeanor said it all. She smiled less. She was less proactive at joint events with Catherine. While Catherine always maintained a composed demeanor, Camilla began to show signs of avoiding shared photo moments. The public began to wonder, between these two leading women of the royal family, was there genuine collaboration or just a diplomatic facade? Some internal royal sources even disclosed that during a high-level internal meeting in late 2023, Camilla had requested to retain certain ceremonial roles that were gradually falling into Catherine's hands. She argued that too clear a division might cause the public to misunderstand her actual position as queen. But the proposal was not met with enthusiasm. A senior advisor gently suggested that Camilla should focus on mentoring the next generation rather than clinging to what no longer belonged to her. Camilla was not unaware of that. But how could it not hurt? When the symbols that were once her pride, once proof of her hard-earned legitimacy, were now being handed to someone else. With time, the gap between Camilla and Catherine became increasingly apparent, even though both continued to appear with standard smiles. Under the spotlight, they embodied continuity and unity. But behind the scenes, the whispers grew louder. Some said Camilla was beginning to feel out of place in the very palace she had struggled to enter. Others believed she was planning a new strategy to avoid being overshadowed in the quiet transition of power from King Charles to Prince William. Whatever the case may be, the pain of this invisible transfer still burned within Camilla. Because sometimes there's no need for open rejection or an official letter of dismissal. Just a single glance cast towards someone else is enough to make the remaining one feel that they've already been replaced. And in the royal world, where every action is recorded by history, Camilla knows one thing clearly, even as queen. She cannot win against the perfect and meticulously crafted image of Catherine. A Catherine beloved by the public. A Catherine trusted by Prince Philip until his very last moments. And now, a Catherine slowly ascending to the pinnacle of power, not with a roar, but with the deadly silence of absolute admiration. If there were a referendum right now, in the midst of a Britain shaken by King Charles III's illness and the mysterious absence of Princess Catherine, the question would not revolve around the throne, nor around Prince William or Harry. It would be, whom do the people choose as the role model for a future Queen Catherine, the woman deeply loved? Or Camilla, the one once cursed as the other woman who would never be forgiven? And the answer, it seems, has already been written in the hearts of millions of Britons, not because Catherine is the wife of the heir to the throne, not because she is the mother of Prince George, the second in line, but because Catherine embodies all the qualities that Britain longs for in a queen: patience, elegance, courage, and above all, a past untainted by scandal. She has never had to speak up to defend herself. She has never taken to the stage to criticize anyone, nor ever used tears to gain sympathy. And yet, it is precisely that silence that commands more respect than any justification ever could. While Camilla remains overshadowed by the legacy of Diana, Catherine quietly rises to become the archetype of a new era, a symbol of compassion and dedication. People can forgive mistakes, but they cannot forget who hurt a golden heart like Diana's. That is why, even though Camilla has officially been crowned and called queen, for many, that title remains in name only. They still whisper in tea rooms, in family conversations, and in private social media groups. We never chose Camilla. The one who deserves to be queen is Catherine, Diana's daughter-in-law. Camilla may sit on the throne, may walk beside King Charles in royal ceremonies. But the public's gaze is different. They cannot forget the tearful eyes of Diana long ago when she was betrayed. They cannot forget her bitter confession in the 1995 interview. There were three of us in this marriage, and they certainly cannot forget who that third person was. Meanwhile, Catherine has never heard anyone, even when hounded by the media, compared endlessly to Diana and speculated to be at odds with Meghan Markle. Catherine remained silent. She did not retaliate. She did not perform. She simply did the one thing a wife, a mother, and a princess needed to do: preserve her dignity. And the British people loved that. They loved the way she held Charlotte's hand when the little girl was nervous in the crowd. They loved the way she looks at William without needing words. They loved the way she bowed her head before Queen Elizabeth II's coffin, a gesture of humility that no one could teach. In Catherine's gaze, there is the patience of a wife walking beside her husband, the gentleness of a mother ready to protect her child, and the steadiness of a woman who knows her place without having to say it. Completely unlike Camilla, she has had a whole life to prepare, a whole life to become queen. But the more she tries, the more the patches show. Camilla cannot erase a past that once shattered a family, cannot hide the memories of secret phone calls between her and Charles while Diana was still his lawful wife, and cannot stop people from thinking, if not for her, maybe Diana would still be alive. Though time may heal wounds, there are some that only scab over but never fully heal. And every time Camilla appears in public, that scab is ripped open again, exposing a wound that has never stopped bleeding. Meanwhile, Catherine, though battling illness, remains a symbol of hope. She is not just a wife. She is a choice, and a declaration that the British monarchy can still be right, can still be kind. That after all the mistakes, the scandals, the pain Diana endured, at the very least, Britain still has a woman it can trust. And that woman, none other, is Catherine. Some even say that if tomorrow the monarchy gave the people a choice, it wouldn't be the Prince of Wales nor Charles, but Catherine, whom the people would choose to lead Britain with her heart. No crown needed, no throne required. Her very presence is enough to make people feel at peace. And perhaps that is the true justice for Diana, because if Camilla could ascend to the throne by Charles's decision, then Catherine was placed into the hearts of the people by her own conduct. One came by power, the other remains through love. The gap between Catherine and Camilla grows more apparent by the day. One is the woman everyone wants to call queen. The other is the woman whose crown cannot redeem her reputation. And if there were a choice to be made, the British people likely wouldn't hesitate. They would choose Catherine, not because she is perfect, but because she has never tried to prove she is. She simply is who she is. And that is enough to become a symbol. As public opinion continued to swirl, Prince Philip's decision appeared to shift the entire balance of power within the British royal family. The will he left for Catherine was not merely a personal gift, but a bold declaration: the future of the monarchy does not lie in the hands of those who once intruded upon another's marriage, but with those who understand love, sacrifice, and the importance of preserving family values. Philip, the man who had always stood behind Queen Elizabeth through every upheaval, had seen in Catherine what he never saw in Camilla: a spirit of unconditional service, a character that needed no flamboyance yet commanded the respect of an entire nation. With a calm gaze and silent shoulders bearing great burdens, Catherine is slowly fulfilling the dream. Philip left behind a royal family that is more accessible, more compassionate, and especially no longer ruled by the quiet schemes that once hid behind palace doors. But that very choice now ignites a deeply controversial question. Is Catherine truly strong enough to overcome the challenges and lead the monarchy forward? Or will Philip's decision unwittingly thrust Camilla into an irreconcilable confrontation? Leave a comment with the number 1 if you believe Catherine is the rightful choice for the future of the royal family. Or press 0 if you see it differently. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters in Catherine's journey, the woman who is rewriting the royal legacy through humility and devotion.